Welcome. Today we are really opening the source code on a huge pivot for technical freelancers.
A really lucrative one.
Yeah, the one that, separates trading time for dollars from actually creating these compounding assets.
Right. It's about turning that corporate chaos we all know exists into something that can generate recurring revenue.
And that whole transformation, it really hinges on a change in how you see things, doesn't it?
It's a complete perspective shift. You have to stop looking for new problems to solve.
And start looking for what?
For validated pain. Acute pain that's already, somehow running the business, even if it's barely holding on. We're not talking about building beautiful, speculative things here.
Yeah.
We're talking about reverse engineering the mess that the market has, for whatever reason, already accepted.
And to do this, we've got some pretty extraordinary material.
Yeah, this is exciting.
We have to give a huge thank you right up top to the ex-freelancer owner who gave us access to some pretty extensive excerpts from their unreleased book, Boring Problems, Big Money.
Which is such a great title.
It is. And this isn't just theory. It's a tactical blueprint for finding these inefficiencies that are everywhere, often just hiding in a spreadsheet.
Exactly. So our mission today, really, is to dissect one specific mandate from the book.
One high-leverage mandate.
Right. How to find that internal corporate chaos, that specific pain point, and turn it into a high-margin software blueprint that basically sells itself.
And the book says the cheat code for this, for getting rid of that market validation risk, is in the darkest corners of a company.
That's where you find it.
Yeah.
And what the book calls the shadow IT economy.
Okay, so let's unpack that. I think the best place to start is with the reality that traps so many developers. The book calls it the freelancer's trap.
Right.
So the freelancer's trap, it's not really about being poor, is it? It's about something else.
No, not at all. You can be making great money. It's about hitting a wall.
A wall of linearity.
That's it. You're the expert. You're charging, say, $200, $300 an hour. But every single dollar you earn is a direct trade for a piece of your life you can't get back.
It feels good because the money's good. It's seductive.
Very. But you always slam into what the book calls the linearity wall. And that wall just dictates that your economic output is capped. It's structurally capped by the 24 hours in a day.
Minus sleep and, just existing.
Right. That's the real constraint. The highest value work, the work that gives you real leverage, isn't solving one client's problem for a high hourly fee.
It's finding the underlying problem.
The structural problem that an entire market segment shares,
Mm-hmm.
like all mid-market manufacturing companies. And then you architect a system that solves it autonomously.
And you sell the solution, not your time.
Exactly. You sell it as a compounding asset. The trap is that the immediate cash flow from the hourly work, it distracts you from seeing the signals that point to that bigger scalable problem.
And those signals, they're almost always disguised as chaos, right? Hiding on plain sight.
Often in a single file. A file so fragile that the entire company is basically afraid of it.
Yeah, think about the risk here. Did you know, and this is from the book, that millions of dollars of business revenue often run on a literal ticking time bomb?
That one dangerous file.
The single most dangerous file, and it always has a terrifyingly specific name, like,
Final _V3 _fixed.
really, final.xlix? Yeah. That repetition, that fear in the file name, that's the signal. That is the siren song of acute pain.
That spreadsheet, that brittle macro, it's the physical manifestation of unaddressed business pain. This is what shadow IT is. It's the structural failure.
So for anyone who doesn't know, what exactly is shadow IT?
It's just when employees deploy their own systems, their own software, to get around the official IT process because it's too slow or doesn't do what they need.
So it's a company basically saying, we can't afford to wait for the official solution.
Exactly. It's an act of desperation.
I can see that. It's the accountant who needs to consolidate 50 giant regional sales reports, like right now, for the month-end close.
But corporate IT says the official ERP integration will take 6 months and cost $500,000.
Right. So the accountant who now has to be this citizen developer,
Yes.
they create this monster macro workbook to just duct tape the whole thing together.
Precisely. And that is exactly where the trap is set for the developer. A talented developer sees that terrifying file, and their first thought is, I can charge $250 an hour to debug this one macro.
Right. I'll fix the syntax, make it run a bit faster.
And they get paid really well to do it. But that's high-leverage manual labor.
Mm.
The architect, on the other hand, has to ignore that hourly opportunity.
And see the risk instead.
They have to see the multi-million-dollar business that is depending on that single, unsupported, non-auditable file running on some guy named Steve's old desktop in the corner.
Okay, but hold on. If the problem is really that big, I mean, if millions of dollars or compliance is at stake, why hasn't the company already just thrown a huge budget at it? Why wait for a Micro-SaaS?
That is the critical question. And the answer reveals the institutional failure that actually creates the opportunity. Yeah. It's twofold, really.
Okay.
First, the pain is usually hyper-specific. It's too niche, too boring for the big ERP systems like SAP or Oracle to bother with.
And the second reason?
The pain sits in this gap between the end user, the accountant, and the IT department. IT sees that fragile spreadsheet as a security risk, an amateur nuisance. They try to block it.
They don't see that it's actually the most important business requirement.
They completely miss it. The problem is too small for big IT, but it's absolutely essential for the business user to do their job.
So if you just go in, fix the macro, and walk away, you've left so much value on the table.
You've earned an hourly fee, sure, but you've completely missed the opportunity to monetize the company's biggest source of anxiety.
That specific file isn't just a calculation then.
No. It is a mitigation system for career-ending consequences. We're talking catastrophic compliance failures, audit problems that stop the business cold, payroll errors that lead to lawsuits.
Things that get people fired.
Absolutely. This acute documented pain is the very definition of a problem with a high compounding subscription fee. You're not selling a better spreadsheet.
You're selling insurance.
You're selling reliable, absolute insurance against disaster. And peace of mind for the employee whose entire career is tied to that spreadsheet not crashing.
Wow. Framing it as insurance instead of software. That changes the entire budget conversation, doesn't it?
It moves it from nice to have to a non-negotiable expense.
Okay, so if that chaotic file is the pain, how does the architect find the money? How does this pain define what the book calls the shadow IT blueprint?
The aha moment is realizing that shadow IT isn't a nuisance. It's a free market research lab.
Right. Not a security problem, but a database of user requirements that the market has already put a price on.
That's the reframe. The IT department sees a compliance headache. The architect sees market research.
And how does the book define shadow IT in this context?
By its output and its fragility. It's all those workflows cobbled together by desperate citizen developers. You know, macros, old VBA scripts, pivot tables, these giant multi-sheet workbooks.
And it's all brittle and undocumented.
And usually relies on one person's memory. But the genius here is realizing that fragility is your competitive moat.
I see. Because the complexity keeps other freelancers out, and the fragility is the reason they need a subscription from you.
Exactly.
So let's get into the financial core of this, the proof of pain.
Right. Every single one of those complex macro-laden workbooks is a paid-for prototype for your Micro-SaaS.
Paid for how?
The company has already invested hundreds, maybe thousands of hours of human capital, domain knowledge, and employee anxiety into building and maintaining that workaround.
And that proves the problem is acute enough to justify all that manual labor.
It proves it beyond a shadow of a doubt.
So you're saying the market has already quantified the cost of the problem?
Not just quantified it. It eliminates your validation risk. The book calls this the architect's pivot.
The architect's pivot.
When you find that spreadsheet, you're not guessing if a problem exists. You're not falling into the build trap. You are simply observing the desperate solution the market has already paid to prototype.
It shifts everything from guesswork to just replacement engineering.
That's it.
Let's talk about that concept, the wallet vote. How do you actually quantify the value that the company's already paid?
The wallet vote is simply the cost of the status quo. So let's say you have a business analyst, makes $80,000 a year.
Okay.
If she spends 10 hours a week, every single week, just managing that final V3 fix ed.xlx file, that's 500 hours a year.
At a burden rate of, what, $50 an hour?
Something like that.
Yeah.
So the company's already spending $25,000 a year just managing the pain. And that's not even counting the cost of errors or the audit risk.
That's a staggering number. 25 grand a year to keep a broken system limping along.
Exactly. So when you come in with a robust cloud-native tool that costs, say, $4.99 a month, that's $6,000 a year.
You're not asking for money. You're offering them a nearly 4x reduction in their pain management costs. Plus, you're getting rid of the catastrophic liability.
This is why the product is an antibiotic, not a vitamin. Antibiotics are non-negotiable when you have a life-threatening fever.
And the architect always hunts for the fever.
Always.
This brings up those stats about spreadsheets. The book mentions just how unstable the whole spreadsheet economy is.
Oh, the data is overwhelming. It's terrifying. We're running a global economy on Excel and Google Sheets. That's over 4 billion users.
And the error rate is huge, right?
Academic research consistently shows something like 94% of business spreadsheets contain material errors, not typos, logic errors that lead to financial disaster.
We really forget the impact a single cell error can have.
The examples are legendary. You have the Norway Sovereign Wealth Fund, one of the world's largest, losing $92 million because of a date formatting mistake in a spreadsheet.
92 million.
Or Fidelity Magellan losing millions from a simple copy-paste error. When you see that level of risk, you realize your job as an architect isn't to build the next sexy AI art tool.
It's to fix the boring, repetitive friction points that carry existential risk.
The ones that are too niche for Microsoft or Google to solve, but are absolutely critical to that mid-market business.
So the key takeaway here is the company has already given you the roadmap, and they've paid the validation fee with their own labor and risk. So let's apply this. How do you actually read the roadmap?
Okay, good question.
Let's say you find that monster Excel file. It's running inventory management for a multi-million-dollar fulfillment business. What does that file actually translate to?
That file is your complete, fully validated product roadmap. You do not need focus groups. You don't need to A/B test features.
You just translate it.
You're just translating brittle procedural code into a robust cloud-native architecture. Its logic is your feature set.
Okay, break that down. The column headers are the database fields. That's easy. But how does the macro logic become the feature stack?
You look for the most complex, most critical calculation in there. For example, maybe the macro's main job is to calculate the variance between column D, received inventory, and column E, expected inventory.
Okay.
And then it automatically emails the supply chain director if that variance is over, say, 10%, that whole block of logic.
That's your minimum viable product.
That is your immediate high-value MVP.
So MVP is variance calculation, a threshold check, and an automated notification, and it's already validated.
Yes, and here's the best part. The flaws in that macro, the manual steps it still requires, those point you to your premium features, your upsells. If the analyst first has to manually clean up SKU variations, correcting vendor 1 SKU to match V1 SQA, that manual friction is your high-value feature.
So your Micro-SaaS needs to have fuzzy matching logic.
Or regex parsers, or rule-based normalization. You solve that last mile of friction. The flaws in the shadow IT are the blueprints for the features that command the highest price.
That is incredible leverage. The problem pays for the solution, and the pain pays for the premium features. The book talks about another signal of pain specific to accounting called the plug.
The plug is, it's maybe the most powerful signal of acute pain you can find.
What is it?
In accounting, a plug is a made-up number. It's an estimate you stick in a ledger just to make the final balance sheet balanced.
Because the underlying data doesn't actually match up.
Right. It's a dirty secret, a source of huge professional anxiety, and a massive compliance risk. It means the books aren't empirically true.
So the second you hear an accountant admit they use a plug during the month-end close,
You've struck gold. You've identified an urgent, high-stakes problem they are desperate to solve.
and the product thesis just writes itself.
It does. You don't need a fancy dashboard.
Right.
You need a tool that pulls from the 2 different spreadsheets, compares them with some fuzzy logic, and highlights the exact line item discrepancies with an audit trail. You're not selling an app. You're selling integrity. You're selling compliance.
Which is worth a massive premium. So if the whole strategy is about replacing an internal system, this completely changes who you're competing against.
It does.
Who is the actual competition here?
It's almost never a big software company. You're not competing with Microsoft Excel. You're not competing with a $10 million ERP system.
You're competing with Steve.
You were competing with Steve, the power user who built that spreadsheet 5 years ago and is long gone. His undocumented knowledge lives only in that VBA file.
And Steve's file is the single point of failure. It's unsupported, undocumented, and the one person who knows how it works is about to retire.
And that fragility, that is your financial leverage. Think about the risk. A multi-million-dollar business is praying that Steve's file doesn't crash during an audit.
A single error could cost them tens of thousands in fines.
Or hundreds of thousands. They are facing a $50,000 annual risk exposure from a $0 piece of unsupported software.
But why buy your small tool instead of just doing a big ERP migration?
Because that ERP migration takes 3 years, costs millions, and often fails to solve these niche problems anyway. The architect solution is surgical and immediate.
So they'll see a subscription of, say, $79 a month.
As absolute cheap insurance against catastrophic failure. It instantly moves from being a software expense to a necessary liability mitigation line item on their budget.
Your subscription is a tiny fraction of the potential loss. You're selling reliability.
And maintenance and auditability as a service.
That is the core transition from hourly laborer to architect. So let's get into the architectural mandate. This is where theory becomes an actionable, monetizable system.
Right.
So the big actionable advice is stop solving one-off VBA bugs for an hourly rate. That just locks you into that linearity wall. Instead, you need to abstract the logic. What does that mean, practically?
It means you shift your focus completely. You stop looking at the syntax of the script, the semicolons, the variable names, the bugs.
And you start looking at
A high-level architecture of the system, the data flow, persistence, error handling, the scaling constraints. The freelancer gets paid for the lines of code they write. The architect gets paid for designing the system that runs itself.
And the architectural mandate is to turn that chaotic macro logic into something robust, serverless, and monetizable. The book says a big part of this is using generative AI, but not as the product.
Exactly. Not as the product, but as your contractor. The architect's job is now orchestration, not code generation.
You use what the book calls the AI contractor to handle the low-value work of translating logic into syntax.
Right. And you, the architect, focus on the high-leverage decisions, defining the business logic, the security constraints, and making sure the architecture can survive the platform's immutable physics.
And the architecture you choose for this replacement, the book calls it the invisible bridge. This isn't a traditional big SaaS app, right?
No, not at all. The invisible bridge is designed for low overhead and maximum integration. It's the secure, cloud-native replacement for Steve's empire. And it's built on serverless platforms like Google Apps, Scripts, or Office Scripts.
Which eliminates a ton of friction.
A ton. You don't manage servers, authentication is handled by the cloud provider, and distribution is through their existing marketplaces. It just drastically cuts your time to market.
But that serverless environment, it has hard limits the original desktop macro never had. The biggest one the book talks about is the 6-minute wall.
The 6-minute wall is the immovable physics of the platform. Google Apps Script, for example, gives you exactly 360 seconds for a single script execution. That's it.
So a loop that works fine on 10 rows in Excel will just die when it hits 10,000 rows in the cloud.
It'll crash silently. The novice developer sees this as a fatal flaw. The architect sees it as a design constraint that must be solved structurally.
So how do you design a system that has to process millions of data points, but is limited to 6-minute chunks?
You implement what's called the continuation pattern, or trigger chaining. You basically decompose a huge 1-hour task into a series of small, discrete sprints. It's like a relay race.
So you break the job into chunks that can finish in, what, 4 or 5 minutes?
Comfortably, yeah. Leaving you time for a clean shutdown.
I get the high-level idea, but what are the specific components you need to make that relay race actually work without dropping the baton?
You need 3 mandatory components to ensure the system remembers where it left off. First, you need a timer.
So just code that's constantly checking the clock.
Constantly, it's checking new date, .get time. And it knows it has to time out well before the 6-minute cutoff, maybe at the 4:30 mark.
And the second component is the state management.
Yes, the state saver. Before the script gracefully terminates, it has to save its checkpoint, the index of the last row it completed, whatever, into a persistent memory store.
For app script, that's the property service, right? Not the catch service.
Critically, yes. Property service persists indefinitely. Cache is volatile. The state saver makes sure no work is lost, and the process is idempotent.
Meaning if it runs twice, the outcome is the same.
Correct.
And then finally, you need the respawner to kick off the next leg of the race.
The respawner is just the programmatic call that creates the next execution. Before the script exits, it uses scriptapp.newTrigger to schedule a new one-time trigger for, say, 30 seconds in the future.
It hands the baton to the next script.
Which then wakes up, reads the saved state from property service, and picks up right where the last one left off. This turns an impossible, crash-prone job into a predictable, autonomous process.
Okay, that handles long operations, but what about multiple users? If 3 accountants all hit run reconciliation at the same time, they could corrupt the shared data.
That is the threat of the N+1 disaster and concurrency collisions. And preventing that is absolutely non-negotiable for a commercial product. You have to enforce atomic transactions.
And you do that with the lock service. So explain the lock service. It's more than just a queue, right?
It's a mutex lock. It's the bouncer for the critical section of your code. It ensures only one script instance can access a shared resource, like the central inventory sheet or the license key balance, at any given time.
And any other script trying to get in has to wait?
It's forced to wait in line until the first one releases the lock.
And this is so important in serverless because the platform is designed for parallel execution. Without it, all those requests hit the database at the same time and corrupt the data.
Right. And the most common and most financially devastating result of that is a revenue leak.
A race condition.
Exactly. A user buys 100 credits. They run a task that costs 10 credits 4 times simultaneously. Before the system can write the deduction, they could run all 4 tasks and only get charged for 1.
So you lose revenue because of concurrency.
You destroy your margin. Architecting the lock service ensures transactional integrity. It signals that this is commercial-grade software, not just a fragile script.
So the architect's job isn't writing code faster. It's engineering the system to survive the platform's physics and the chaos of multiple users, which leads to the final piece, defending the margin.
That's sovereignty. The system has to be designed for profitability. This means eliminating the bill trap and mitigating what the book calls the AI cost disease.
We know shadow IT eliminates the build trap, so let's focus on the financial architecture. If we're replacing manual labor with a smart tool that uses AI for, say, data classification, we introduce a variable cost, LLM tokens.
And that variable cost is the AI cost disease. If you adopt a flat rate price, say $99 a month, for an AI-heavy tool, you're entering a mathematical suicide pact.
Because the marginal cost is no longer zero.
It's not. If your API provider raises prices or a power user figures out they can consume vast amounts of tokens, your margin just collapses instantly.
Let's put numbers on that. A $99 subscription, you break even at $50 in costs, and you're paying a cent per high-quality API call.
In that scenario, a user only has to make 3,900 of those calls to bankrupt your margin on them. A power user could consume hundreds of dollars in tokens a month.
So growth, acquiring more power users, actually leads to financial ruin.
That is the suicide pact. Every new unit costs you more than the revenue it brings in.
So how does the architect defend the margin against this?
By implementing the bring your own key, BYOK model.
3YO.
It's the safest model. You charge a predictable high-margin subscription fee for your UI, your custom workflow, your architectural resilience, the trigger chaining, the lock service. That's your platform fee.
But the user has to input their own API key from Gemini or OpenAI.
Right. And that instantly shifts the variable cost of the tokens, the single biggest threat to your margin, entirely to the customer's balance sheet.
It also shifts the liability, right?
Completely. First, it legally decouples your finances from their consumption. Second, it shifts data liability. The user's proprietary data never touches your servers. It goes straight from their cloud to the LLM provider.
Which means your system is designed for incredibly high gross margins.
90% or higher. And that signals health and liquidity to potential buyers. Growth no longer leads to ruin. It leads to maximized, defensible profit.
That's the ultimate inversion of labor. You're not the laborer pouring concrete anymore. You're the system designer commanding external intelligence to build the asset for you.
And that is the full scope of the Shadow IT blueprint. The system is built on validated pain, architectural resilience, and margin defense. It's transformed from labor into a compounding, sellable financial asset.
That wraps up our deep dive into the Shadow IT blueprint, all sourced from boring problems, big money. We've gone from the freelancer's trap to the architect's mandate, and we saw how that terrifying final v3 fixed.xlsx file,
That's not a headache.
it's a fully validated, paid-for prototype just waiting for a robust replacement.
Absolutely. The final takeaway for you is this. Stop hunting for the next sexy idea that needs months of validation. Start hunting for the boring problem.
Find the high-stakes friction.
The manual reconciliation, the multi-step copy-paste task managed in a spreadsheet. That acute pain is your roadmap, and a resilient replacement for it is your financial insurance policy.
So as you look around your own professional world today, ask yourself this. Which shadow IT process from your old job that repetitive, soul-crushing task would command the highest subscription fee if you automated it.
And more critically, analyze the constraints. What structural problems like the 6-minute wall or concurrency did that task have? And how would you apply the continuation pattern in the lock service to turn it into a turnkey asset designed for maximum margin?
That's the definitive question.
That's the question for the architect.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the blueprint for automated income. We will catch you next time.